I want to take a minute to thank everyone for all of the incredibly kind and supportive feedback you've given me about this story. It is wonderful to be finally putting it out in the world, but it also has been torture because it really was rejected more times than I care to admit, even by my own agent, who just felt as though we'd hit an impasse and it just, without major edits, it wasn't going to get there. But I am hard-headed, and I needed this off my desk and out of my mind. I've been with these characters for so many years, and I see them all so clearly, and it is really wonderful to have you now get to know them and understand their quirks, and just thank you. There are a lot of things vying for our attention right now, especially so many worries and horrible things happening. And I really appreciate your coming here for your break and your distraction. And while I hope that things are going to get better in our world, things are going to get really bad for May. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And bad guys aren't meant to win. They burn out. And our bad guy will do just that. Chapter 46. We followed Lucky's lead and poured refills. Tom undid the chain lock on the basement door. Let's get this over with. Lucky met my eyes and gave a small, disapproving shake of her head. The gemstones are gorgeous, Kat said once we were all in the basement. I still can't believe they might be real. No way, said Derek. Sorry, I forgot to tell you that part, Kat apologized. I'm having someone appraise ours, Forbes said. You're going to sell them? I asked, surprised. No, but we need to have them insured in case the house burns down, right? Tom had been pulling strings to overhead lights but paused halfway across the basement, his attention on his phone. What's up? I asked, annoyed that he couldn't even take one night off from the damn thing. He glanced up only briefly, then quickly typed something and slid his phone back into his pocket. Nothing, just a client. He continued on, turning on the remaining bulbs. I noted the pile of flat boxes in one corner, his supposed workbench. What's all that? Forbes asked. Tom explained he wasn't as far along in building the bench as he'd hoped. It seemed to me he could have built 3 workbenches with the amount of time he'd spent down there. I'm happy to come over and give you a hand, Forbes offered. My father-in-law gave me a nice set of tools last Christmas, always looking for a reason to use them. Lucky muttered something I didn't quite catch. Kat placed the Ouija board beside the keystone. Here we go, she said, sounding less excited than she had earlier. Hold on. Derek ran back upstairs. We listened in silence as his footsteps moved across the kitchen floor. He reappeared carrying 3 of my votive candles. Mood lighting, he said brightly as he arranged them beside the keystone. Looks official, Forbes commented, kneeling down beside the board. The men followed his lead, and after a slight hesitation, Kat did as well. She looked up at me and patted the ground. I forced a smile and knelt beside her. Lucky stood back and crossed her arms. I am not sitting on that floor in this dress. Then how will you reach the planchette? Forbes asked. I'm not going to reach the planchette. You totally don't have to play if you don't want to, Kat said, trying to smooth the tension. I know that. Let's just do this already, I pleaded. It's freezing down here. Everyone place 1 finger on the planchette, Derek instructed, but don't push it around. Just let it move by itself. I'll bet anyone $100 absolutely nothing happens, Forbes commented. Let's hope you're right, Tom said in a low voice. We waited. Somebody should ask a question, Kat prompted. Are there any spirits here with us? Forbes intoned. I held my breath, motionless and filled with dread. Nothing happened. Lucky began to say something, but Forbes shushed her. The silence stretched out. Didn't you say you studied religion or something at BC? Derek asked, directing the question to Tom. Tom laughed. I studied early 20th century Christianity. Not too many Ouija boards involved. But they must have mentioned demons, Derek countered. Kat pulled her hand away from the board. Whoa, I thought we were trying to talk to ghosts, like Olive Talbot or that guy who built the neighborhood. Put your hand back, said Tom. Tom, I admonished, chill out. Sorry, he apologized quickly. I guess I'm more freaked out than I thought. Don't worry about it, Kat said, reaching back out to touch the planchette. What was that guy's name, the developer? Asked Derek. Payne, Elwyn Payne. Is there an Elwyn Payne here with us? Derek asked the board. The planchette twitched ever so slightly. Who did that? Kat asked, pulling her hand away again. Shit, I breathed, taking my own hand off the device. Put your hands back, it's working, Derek demanded excitedly. Kat and I exchanged a look, neither of us reaching back out. Elwyn, are you the one haunting this house? Asked Forbes. That time, the planchette didn't just twitch, it slid across the board and came to a stop over the word no. I swear, breathed Kat, if you guys are moving that thing. If you are here with us, Elwyn, please give us a sign of your presence. Don't ask that, I said quickly. I don't want... But I didn't have a chance to finish the sentence. A loud bang rang out, followed by our screams. That was the basement door, Lucky squeaked, scooting closer to the group. Okay, that's enough. Can we stop now? Kat pleaded. Tom stood and looked up the stairs. The door's closed. I just said that, hissed Lucky. Derek put his hands out to quiet them. You guys, shut up. I'm with Kat, I said. We need to stop. You all get to go home, but we have to sleep here. May, shh, Tom said, echoing Derek. I was about to protest when a creak over our heads stopped me. There's someone up there, Lucky breathed. We all stared up at the exposed ceiling boards. Someone was walking around the first floor. We tracked the footsteps from the kitchen down the short back hallway and into the living room, where the steps became somewhat muffled as they crossed over my newly purchased rug. Then they picked up through the front hall and back into the kitchen, where they moved again towards the back hall and started the circuit again. Maybe it's Cornish. Maybe he forgot something, Kat suggested. Or maybe it's Grill, Derek guessed. We should call 911, I said, but the group ignored me, listening as the footsteps picked up speed, continuing on their route. Maybe they're just looking for us, said Kat, her voice shaking. Hello? Shush, Lucky whispered. If someone's up there looking for us, you'd think they'd realize they were on the wrong track after the second loop around the first floor, Derek pointed out. I moved to stand beside Tom at the base of the stairs. Hello, I called loudly, my voice shaky. Who's there? The footsteps stopped. We all stood frozen, listening. After a long pause, whoever or whatever was up there stomped their way into the living room. There were thuds and bangs. I think they're knocking things off the bookshelves. Bad memories from our break-in and the city flooded my mind. Without thinking, I began to climb the stairs, but Tom caught my arm and stopped me. It's gotta be Grill, Forbes said angrily. He's just trying to scare us. Well, it's fucking working, Lucky wailed. I can't believe I agreed to come down here. We're trapped. We can go out the bulkhead, Kat suggested. Derek moved toward the stairs. You all go ahead, but I want to see who's up there. If it is Grill, he's going to have a real problem on his hands. Kat reached for his arm. You know that's not Grill. Whatever. Who's going to open the bulkhead? Lucky asked, moving towards the back corner of the basement. She was halfway there when a loud creak, followed by a metallic bang, rang out. It sounded as if someone outside had lifted the metal bulkhead doors and slammed them back down. Lucky scrambled back to the safety of the group. Never mind, she whispered. Let's just stay right here. Tom moved across the basement. The bulkhead was locked. I checked the bar every night before bed. This time it was Derek who reached out an arm to stop him. Then maybe there's someone outside, behind that door, waiting on the stairs. Only one way to find out, Tom replied. I watched in growing terror as he went to the old wooden door, slid the bolt, and yanked it open. He stared for a moment up at the slanted metal doors above his head. All clear, he called. The bar is still in place. He climbed 2 steps, then reached up to slide the bar and unlock the door, to which everyone yelled out a panic mess of, Stop! Don't! Wait! Causing him to stop in mid-motion. Don't you dare open that door, Lucky said, her voice a loud whisper. Whoever slammed it could still be out there. Tom, I pleaded. The demon mask that Cornish said he saw. Maybe he wasn't joking. Maybe he really did see something. Without another word, Tom backed into the basement, shut the wooden door, and locked it. Several loud bangs pulled our attention back to the ceiling. Our new chairs, I said sadly. Enough, Tom barked, moving back across the basement and jogging up the stairs. But instead of opening the door, he stopped at the top step and listened. Forbes and Derek moved up behind him. What are you going to do? I whispered, standing beside Kat and Lucky. Catch him by surprise, Derek said in a low voice. And then the lights went out. Chapter 47. Chaos ensued. Every last one of us screamed like we were being murdered. Lucky grabbed onto my arm, and Kat basically threw herself around me as if clinging on for dear life. The guys, attempting to push the door open, were stopped by the chain lock. Several tense moments passed as they slammed against the door, trying to break past the lock. All the while, Kat whimpered. The candles by the Ouija board flickered ominously, making an already terrifying situation worse, and Lucky muttered a litany of complaints against her husband. Drag me down to this godforsaken rat hole, and it takes 3 of them to open a goddamn door? I don't know who he thinks he married. And in an unfinished fieldstone basement, for Christ's sake. On and on she went without seeming to take a breath. The door finally gave way, and the men stumbled out into the back hall. I pulled away from Kat, but could not escape Lucky's vice-like grip. We climbed the stairs together cautiously. I was desperate to get out of that basement, but terrified of what we might find upstairs. All clear, Forbes called from the living room. He must have run out, Derek replied, motioning to the wide-open French doors. Freezing cold air streamed into the room, the backyard pitch black beyond the twinkle lights I'd strung. I'm going after him, Tom announced. I'll go with you, Derek said, and they were out into the night before anyone could protest. Just then, the lights flickered on, causing us all to freeze in place, waiting for what might come next. But all was still as Forbes closed and locked the patio doors. Your poor chairs, said Kat. My 2 brand-new wingback chairs lay on their sides, their legs broken. They'd been stomped, just like what happened to our furniture in the city. What a shame, Lucky offered. At least he left the couch alone. Kat was bent over, picking up the books that had been knocked off the shelf. Why would someone do this? It had to be Grill. He's a goddamn maniac, Lucky said, helping to pick up the books. We were all so caught up in that stupid board game, Forbes muttered. We should have come right upstairs when we heard those footsteps. But the lights, I said. We were all down there with the fuse box. How could he have turned them all off? There was a knock at the front door. We froze. Forbes walked slowly towards the front hall. It's us, Derek's muffled voice called from the front stoop. Forbes opened the door, and Tom and Derek joined us in the living room. The chairs, Tom said, his tone almost apologetic. It wasn't Grill, Derek announced. He came to their front door in his boxers, and Beretta was with him. He could have just stripped his clothes off, Forbes pointed out. No, they definitely turned in for the night. I think we actually scared them. Good, Lucky huffed. What about Cornish? Kat asked. There's no way he could have moved that fast, said Derek. Then who the hell was it? I demanded. A ghost didn't break my chairs. But that horned thing in your attic might, Forbes offered. Well, I for one have had enough, said Lucky. I'd like to go home. Now. We gotta close the board first, said Derek. Oh, give me a break, Lucky exclaimed. He's right, said Kat. You're not supposed to just quit. I'll be goddamned if anyone thinks I'm going to go back down into that basement, Lucky huffed, sitting on the edge of the couch. We have to blow out those candles, too, I pointed out. Shit, I forgot they were down there, Derek said apologetically. I'll go get 'em, Tom said, sounding utterly exhausted. Derek followed him. They returned moments later, Derek holding the board and planchette and Tom the tea lights. Without a word, everyone but Lucky knelt down around the coffee table. Just put one finger on it like before. Derek pushed the planchette to the word goodbye at the bottom center of the board. We end this Ouija board session. No spirits are allowed to communicate through this board any longer. The connection is closed. Goodbye. He looked up. I think you guys should say it too. Goodbye, we all said, and even Lucky chimed in. I think it's time to call it a night, I said, too exhausted to worry about being rude to our guests. Are you okay? Asked Kat. I forced a smile. I don't know. Come sleep at our house, she said quickly. The guest room's all made up. It would be no... Thank you, really. It's very kind, I said, cutting her off. But I'm too tired to even consider it. I'm sure we'll be fine. But I looked at Derek. I don't want that thing in my house. We appreciate the gift, but please, get it the hell out of here. We walked everyone to the front hall. The goodbyes were subdued. Tom locked the door behind them, then went to the back hall to check that the basement door was locked as well. The chain lock was shot, but the deadbolt still worked. I walked into the family room, taking in the mess. A glass of sangria had spilled on the new rug. There was no chance of getting the deep red stain out of the gray wool. My gaze landed on the bookshelves, their contents having been haphazardly placed by our neighbors. Tom came into the room and tested the French doors, ensuring they were secure. What's wrong? He asked. All of Talbot's journals are gone. You sure? Yes. What would a ghost demon or whatever want with old journals? Chapter 48. I awoke the next morning to the throbbing hum of a hangover and a text from Lucky. You still think the Halloween party was a good idea? I typed the word nope, then deleted it. Instead, I wrote, it was great until we tried to summon the dead. Derek threw that goddamn thing in the trash last night. Kat was like, don't you dare bring that anywhere near our house. Lucky responded immediately. I wish I'd told him to do that right after I unwrapped it, I wrote back. Anything else happen last night? Thank God, no. Wish I could say the same. I waited for her to write more. When nothing came through, I texted 3 question marks. It was nothing. I just found some things out of place when we woke up. That hasn't happened in a long time. This is getting out of control. No one ever listens to me. We need to ignore it, Lucky replied. Then, gotta go. Visiting Daria at UConn for a soccer tourney this morning. I stayed in bed for a time beside Tom, listening to his steady breathing. I hadn't bothered to close the curtains the night before, so I watched the rust-colored leaves in the front yard thrash in a strong wind. Fast-moving clouds streamed across the overcast sky above. I closed my eyes in an attempt to fall back to sleep, but there was no hope of slipping back into oblivion. Finally, I gave up and threw my legs over the side of the bed. The movement caused a sharp pain behind my eyes. I hadn't exactly been drunk the night before, but I had steadily refilled my glass throughout the night, even pouring a small nightcap after everyone left in an attempt to calm my nerves. When we were in the city, I had the occasional glass of wine, or 2 or 3, went out to dinner with friends, but since moving to the suburbs, those occasional glasses had turned into 2 a night, 3 or 4 or 5 with friends. The wine took the edge off the constant stress of living in the house. Everyone else seemed to handle it just fine, but it was starting to wear on me. I couldn't remember the last morning I'd woken up rested. Maybe that was due to the fact that we lived in a haunted house, but the booze certainly wasn't doing me any favors. I stepped into the shower, wanting the hot water to calm my nerves, but images from the Halloween party plagued my thoughts. The planchette moving across the board, Lucky and Kat's terrified faces at the bottom of the basement stairs, the manic stomping footsteps, and those ruined wingback chairs. Where in the hell were Olive's journals? If it wasn't Grill or Cornish who'd taken them, who had? Once I made my way through the pain writings, I intended to read Olive's journals. I shouldn't have waited. I was changing into a cozy sweater and leggings when Tom woke up. Do you think any of your old professors might be able to help us? I asked, sitting down on the bed beside him. He rubbed his tired, puffy eyes. What? I'd forgotten about your religious studies. I just wonder if maybe one of your old teachers might have some insight into Elwyn Payne or his plan for the neighborhood or, Demons, he supplied. I nodded. Would you reach out to them? And say what? That some old religious guy is buried in front of our house and he might be haunting the entire neighborhood? Of course not, but maybe they could point you in a direction or something. I sighed, frustrated. I don't know. College was so long ago, May. I don't even know where I'd begin. It's just an idea. The more information we have, the better, right? Spoken like a true librarian, he joked. I can't take it if things just keep getting worse. Yeah, well, using a Ouija board on Halloween Eve probably wasn't the best plan. What in the hell were we thinking? I groaned. Tom considered for a long moment. I'll send a couple emails, see if anyone's heard of Payne. Thank you, I said, feeling relieved at the idea of doing something, even if there was only a slim chance it would help. Tom rolled out of bed. I could murder a bacon, egg, and cheese bagel. That sounds amazing, I agreed. Let me get dressed and I'll run into town, he said, disappearing into the bathroom. Cautiously, I opened our bedroom door and listened for a moment before going out onto the hall. All was quiet. I went down the stairs with my back against the wall, a practice that had become habit. The kitchen wasn't in too much disarray. We'd made a marginal effort the night before to at least toss the uneaten food and line up dirty glasses and plates beside the sink. Grateful that I'd set the coffee timer, I poured a cup and leaned against the counter, taking in all that had to be done. My eyes landed on the decorations on the kitchen table. Then, with only the briefest hesitation, I got out a garbage bag and dumped all the Halloween decorations into it. I tied off the bag and threw it into the garage. Tom left to go get breakfast while I tackled the dishes. The day had darkened considerably, and the wind whipped at the trees in the backyard. Again, memories from the night before began running through my mind. It dawned on me that it was Halloween, and I was in a haunted house. Uneasy, I shut the water off, listening to the silence. Why hadn't I gone with Tom? Outside the kitchen window, the lights strung along the back patio twinkled. As I stared at them, wondering if I should go out and unplug them, something at the shadowy edge of the forest caught my eye. Peering closer, I was shocked to see Cornish slinking in the underbrush at the edge of our yard, heading towards the Reeds' property. "That lurky little liar," I whispered to myself, watching as he stopped and glanced at our house. He went very still, as though he could feel my eyes on him, and then turned back to face the Reeds' property. "What the hell is he doing?" I muttered. Fueled by anger and fear, I raised my hand to bang on the window to let him know that he'd been caught, but before I could, Cornish changed. He bent over at the waist, put his hands on the ground before him, and pushed his elbows out, bringing his face close to the ground. His legs bent back at an unnatural angle, bringing him down further. I yelled out in terror and disgust, and Cornish turned and looked right at me through the window. Only, it wasn't Cornish. It was a sort of Cornish thing. Its face stretched long, pointed ears high on its head. I watched as it reared up and then bounced straight back into the forest, like a monstrous dog. Chapter 49. I stumbled backward and banged into the island behind me. The pain of hitting the edge of the counter startled me enough to stop my screaming. I backed through the kitchen, unwilling to take my eyes off the window, terrified the Cornish thing would appear against the glass at any second. Halfway across the room, I heard Tom's key turn in the lock. I froze. The thought of Tom, totally unaware that he was in the vicinity of a monster, frightened me more than any thought that had come before. I watched as he stepped inside, his arms full with a deli bag and a carrier with soda fountain drinks. As he took me in, his expression went from happy surprise to concern. What happened? I grabbed my cell phone off the counter and ran past him to slam and lock the front door. "We have to get upstairs, now." He allowed himself to be dragged only halfway up the stairs before standing his ground. "You're going to knock the drinks out of my hand. What's going on?" I took the sodas from him. "I'll tell you upstairs. We have to get away from the windows." I stood impatiently in our bedroom doorway, waiting for him to come in before slamming the door shut and securing it with a bench from the foot of our bed. Then I took my cell phone from my sweatshirt pocket. "They can't go trick-or-treating with that thing running around in the woods." Tom put the bag of food down on his bedside table and sat on the bed. "May, stop. Tell me what's going on." "Hold on." I scrolled through the group text chain with Lucky, Kat, and Evelyn and began typing. "I just saw Cornish turn into a monster in the woods behind our house. Or maybe it was something that wanted me to think it was Cornish. Whatever it was, it's still out there. It runs like a coyote. You can't bring your kids trick-or-treating. This isn't a joke. There's something in the woods." I pressed send and looked up from the phone. Tom looked pale and tired, defeated. I couldn't help myself. I burst into tears and crawled onto the bed next to him. It took me a minute before I could pull myself together enough to tell him what I'd seen. "It was Cornish, but it wasn't him. He changed. He was like some sort of a werewolf." Tom rubbed my back. "We had a bad scare last night. Maybe—" "No." I pulled away from him. "I didn't imagine it. That thing—" I stopped myself. Exhausted and angry, I got up and went to the bedroom door and pulled the bench out of the way. "I am sick of trying to convince you of every last fucking thing in this house. If you're so sure I didn't see anything or somehow managed to hallucinate the whole thing, why don't you go ahead out there and look for yourself?" He considered me for a moment and then reached for the bag of food. Pulling out a sandwich wrapped in white wax paper, he put it on the bed beside him, then took out the remaining sandwich and a handful of napkins. He stood and retrieved the sodas from the floor, where I'd left them in my panic, and handed one to me before sitting back down on the bed. "Tom," I said desperately. He motioned for me to come and sit next to him. I refused. "I believe you, but I can't think when I'm hungover and starving." I was about to protest when my phone buzzed. "Lucky. Weird Halloween prank, May." As I read, more text came through. "Kat. Haha, wouldn't that be something?" Lucky. "I guess that explains why Grill was so mad last night." Kat. Vampire emoji, ghost emoji, jack-o'-lantern emoji. Lucky. "Well, my kids are in the clear. We left Daria at college and Edward's at his prep school. Hopefully the Cornish monster is as lazy as Cornish and won't leave the neighborhood." Kat. "Lucky, that's mean. We decorated the car this afternoon. We're doing the trunk or treat at the elementary school." Evelyn. "Haha, May. Happy Halloween." Kat. "We're going to the trunk or treat too. See you there." What are they saying? Tom asked, through a mouthful of bagel. None of them are staying in the neighborhood, thank God. But they shouldn't even be walking out to their cars. I don't know what that thing is capable of. Tom considered. I keep thinking about that thing Corner said he saw before he left last night, the demon mask in the bathroom window. I sat on the bed and unwrapped my sandwich. The thing I saw in the woods was huge. The thought of it being close to the house, peering through one of the windows. You said it looked like a coyote? It wasn't a coyote, I snapped, before taking a huge bite of my sandwich. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just that we've heard so much about the coyotes in these woods since we moved here, but we never seen one, right? Maybe there's a connection. There's no way anyone could mistake that thing for a coyote. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I never should have left you alone. Thank you for believing me. Tom's gaze slid away from me towards our barricaded bedroom door. I wish I didn't. Chapter 50. I watched anxiously from the kitchen window as Tom pulled out of the driveway for work Monday morning. I was desperate to get back to the library to dig through Payne's papers, but it would have to wait. The security company was due to answer our emergency service call at 9 o'clock. Tom was all for having a security system installed, but initially disagreed about putting up cameras. Someone or something came into this house when we were all stuck in that basement, I argued. If we'd had cameras up, we would know who did it. Why don't we just start with some sensors on the doors and windows on the first floor? It's expensive. I resented the fact that I didn't have a job and couldn't pay for the damn things without consulting him. I pointed out that it would be a huge peace of mind to have cameras keeping an eye on the house while I was home alone, and he finally acquiesced. The second his car disappeared from view, I returned to our bedroom. I knew it provided only a false sense of safety, but I dragged the bench in front of our door nonetheless. That weekend, I made the decision to get a job and get us out of the house. Once I had some money saved up, I would rent an apartment. If not in Woodland Hills, then nearby. We could keep paying our mortgage until we figured out how to get rid of the house. I didn't try to convince Tom. I figured it would be easier to make him see reason once I put my plan into motion. The security representative showed up right on time. Because we'd put in an emergency request, he had a team with him, ready to begin the installation once we'd agreed upon a plan. You might want to think about holding off on the sensors until you've replaced those windows, he suggested. We don't plan on replacing the windows, I explained as patiently as I could. The man punched a finger around on the screen of his tablet. Well, it's your money. Yes, it is, I replied evenly. We also need cameras installed around the perimeter of the house. I want to be able to see the entire yard. Can you install cameras facing the house, too? If you think that's necessary, but I do. I'd like to be able to see the front, back, and sides of the house. Most people just use a doorbell camera for that. Right, I'd like to know if there's anyone anywhere near our house, not just the doors. He looked up from his tablet for the first time. If you're worried about break-ins, I cut him off. Please, just set up the cameras, okay? I know it'll be expensive, but it's what we want. All right, then. He told me they'd tackle the outdoor installations first. Thank you. I'll be working upstairs. Just ring the doorbell if anything comes up. I locked the door behind him and retreated to our bedroom. After applying to every single library and library-adjacent job within a 30-mile radius, I jumped onto Google. In my gut, I just knew that Elwyn Payne held the key to the cul-de-sac. A search of his name returned articles and websites devoted to Woodland Hills history, so I turned my attention to his church. The article that topped the search results was entitled, Infamous Early 20th Century Cults, The Church of the Confession and Redemption. I scanned the text, my concern growing with every word. The Holy CCNR, as its members referred to it, appeared to be a wicked, strict offshoot of Catholicism. As its name implied, they were big on confessing their sins and then assigning penance as they saw fit in pursuit of redemption for their wrongdoing. The punishments doled out were thought by the members to be influenced by the Holy Spirit. The redemption part was pretty intense. Pointless ditch digging, standing stock still for 66 minutes, shaving women's heads. Those punishments were for minor indiscretions, such as speaking out of turn or wearing clothing the group deemed inappropriate. For everything else, they performed exorcisms. The final paragraph of the article began, Members of the Church of Confession and Redemption were most concerned with ridding themselves of their guiding sin before death. Their belief was that God tested people by allowing Satan to assign every person one of the 7 deadly sins and, along with it, a master demon. Fighting against the demonic temptation to commit that sin was to be their life's work. I had to get back to the library. It appeared that Payne had assigned a sin to each house in the neighborhood when he placed those valuable, possibly priceless, keystones in the basement. I feared he'd attached a demon to each house, too. Just as I was finishing the article, the doorbell rang. I hurried downstairs and opened the front door. Yes? The security company employee stood on the front stoop, looking extremely uncomfortable. The guys found something in the backyard, and we need you to take a look. Can you just tell me what it is? It would probably be better if you came to see for yourself. I'm not going out in the backyard. Okay, then you should probably call someone to deal with it. Like who? I challenged, assuming the guy wanted to speak to my husband. He opened his mouth and then closed it. Exasperated, I asked, "What did they find?" Deer. Deer? A bunch of deer, actually. They're really torn up. Are you saying there's a bunch of dead deer in my backyard? Yes, ma'am, he said, running a hand over his blonde buzz cut. It suddenly occurred to me how young the guy was. He couldn't have been more than 25. They're just past the tree line. Looks like someone took a machete to him. Jesus Christ, I breathed. But my guess is coyotes. Must have been a big pack to take down a herd like that. I gripped the door to steady myself. Are your guys out there right now? Yeah, they're starting to put the cameras near the tree line, and tell them I've changed my mind. Just get them out of the woods, okay? I'd like the idea of being able to monitor the exterior at all times, but it wasn't worth someone getting hurt. The man looked relieved. Are you sure? Yes, I said firmly. But you can still install cameras on the house facing the woods, right? Sure. I began to close the door, but stopped. Who do people call to get rid of dead animals? But he was already halfway across the yard, calling his guys back from the edge of the forest. Chapter 51. I spent the rest of the morning scrambling to find a service willing to remove the deer carcasses. An internet search led me to the Woodland Hills Animal Control Officer, who returned my call almost immediately. You're sure it was an animal attack? The woman asked. I told her I hadn't seen the animals myself, but could only relay what I'd been told. Before providing the name of a reputable removal company, the town official said she'd come out early the following morning to confirm the manner of death didn't indicate safety or health concerns for the community. If only she knew the truth. I thanked her and phoned the removal service. Where's the deer located? The company representative asked after she'd taken my address and contact information. From what I understand, they're all just past the tree line in our backyard. Hold on, how many carcasses are there? The woman asked, as if she were referring to a landscaping request rather than a job removing massacred dead bodies. I think at least 5. There was a long beat before the woman spoke. What happened to them? I don't know, I replied shakily. I was having a hard time holding back tears. Our security company was installing cameras when they found them. They said it looked like the deer had been attacked by coyotes. The woman let out a low whistle. Must have been a big pack of dogs to take out that many of them. A few hours later, when the security team was through with their work, I hopped a ride with them into town. You would have thought it would have been an awkward request, but they seemed to understand that I was desperate to not be left alone in that house. Instead of going to the library, I picked up 3 gossip magazines and holed up at a corner table and roasted. I could read about Payne another time. I'd had enough of the neighborhood for one day. I wanted to fill my head with meaningless celebrity gossip to drown out the imagined scenes of those poor deer being ripped apart by a monster just steps from our back door. Tom played around with the security system for a while, watching the live footage streaming to his phone from the outdoor cameras. The images were surprisingly clear even after darkness fell. We ate takeout in our bedroom, the door secured by the bench. Sick of discussing our predicament, we watched Schitt's Creek on Tom's laptop and tried to forget our troubles. But when Tom went to bring the remains of our meal down to the kitchen, I felt pure terror rise within me. What are you doing? This place will reek if we keep these containers in here overnight. Just put them in the bathroom and close the door. I'll be right back. I stood watch in our bedroom doorway until he reappeared. It's the last thing I want to do, but I should probably go over tomorrow morning and talk to Grill. They should check out their yard, too. Do you mind telling the Rusts? He said, dragging the bench back into place. Can't we just text them? I think this is a little too weird for a text. Better to explain it in person, don't you think? Fine, I sighed. Did you ever hear back from your old college professors? Not yet, he replied, scrolling on his phone. I watched him for a moment, then turned my attention back to the laptop screen. I knew instantly, in the way you know when someone you've known a long time is lying. He hadn't sent that email. Chapter 52. The Reeds weren't home when Tom rang their doorbell the following morning, so I said I would try again after I'd gone to the Rusts. I felt ridiculous having him drop me off in their driveway on his way to work, but the less time I spent outside, the better, as far as I was concerned. Climbing up their front steps, I prayed that Cornish wouldn't be home. Even though I'd come to terms with the fact that the thing I'd seen in our backyard wasn't really him, I still didn't like the idea of having to face the man. Unfortunately, it was Cornish who opened the door to welcome me inside. The thought occurred to me to sprint back to my house, but he looked so genuinely happy to see me, I forced myself to go in. "Linda, May's here!" he screamed. I glanced around the cluttered foyer. A wooden console table overflowing with unopened mail and plastic-wrapped magazines leaned precariously against the wall opposite the staircase. Above it hung a hazy mirror that hadn't been wiped down in ages. Shoes, boots, bags, and sports equipment lined the hallway floor. I actually had to suppress the urge to begin tidying. Linda appeared in a pink fuzzy bathrobe at the top of the stairs, her hair piled on top of her head in a messy bun. "Hi, honey. Excuse my appearance," she said, descending the steps. "I'm working from home today." "I wish I could stay and chat," Cornish said, shrugging into a zip-up sweatshirt. "But if I don't leave now, they'll be all out of the ham and cheese croissants." He kissed Linda on the cheek and rushed out the door. "I'm sure you're busy," I apologized, but this didn't feel like it could wait. "Don't be silly," Linda reassured me, turning into the kitchen. The Rust home had the same basic layout as the other houses on the cul-de-sac, but their kitchen had been reconfigured so that the appliances and cabinets were situated along the front wall of the house, while their kitchen table sat at the back of the room before large sliding glass doors overlooking their backyard. Through the glass, I could see the patio had been winded as well, but the pattern of the addition didn't match the herringbone of the original. "I love what you did to the kitchen." "Thanks, but we can't take credit for it," Linda replied, grabbing the pot from the coffee maker and 2 mugs off a drying rack beside the sink. "The family we bought this house from did all the renovations. Of course, they didn't bother to apply for permits, so everything's a little half-assed. We're constantly dealing with leaks." She pushed a pile of papers on the table out of the way with the mugs. "Sit. Do you take cream and sugar?" "Black's fine, thank you." "So what's up?" she asked, dropping into a chair. I took a deep breath before blurting out, "There are at least 5 deer in our backyard. Well, not in the yard, but just beyond the trees. I have a company coming to take them away today, but Tom and I wanted to tell you because—" Linda held up a hand. "Did you say at least 5? I nodded. "What in the world happened to them?" "I haven't gotten the courage to go out and look, but our security company found them when they were putting out cameras around the house. They said the deer looked like they'd been attacked by coyotes." Doubt that," Linda said, shaking her head. She peered out the sliding doors thoughtfully. "I grew up in upstate New York, and we had coy dogs roaming around. Coy dogs? They're the offspring of domesticated dogs and coyotes. They get pretty big, and I suppose they could take down a deer, but it would have to be a pack of them working together to kill one. Now 5? Never heard anything like it." "The animal control officer is coming out this morning to determine what killed them." "Geez," Linda said, shivering. "That's one job I'm glad I don't have to do." "Well, while the company's out here, maybe Cornish could check behind your house, just in case. I'm sure they'd remove anything you found." "It's not a bad idea," Linda agreed. Such a shame to waste all that meat." I suppressed a shudder. "Well, I just thought I should warn you. I know you have a cat, and your son, Tristan," Linda supplied. "Right, Tristan, sorry. We wanted to make sure you knew so he wouldn't hang out in the backyard until we knew what killed the deer." Linda waved her free hand as she sipped from a mug that read, "This might be wine." "It's sweet of you to worry, but I don't think it's even occurred to him that we have a backyard in years." Footsteps sounded overhead, and we both looked up at the ceiling. "Speak of the devil," I laughed. Linda's face went pale. "Tristan spent the night at a friend's house." Shit. The word escaped my mouth in a whisper. "We used to only hear them at night," Linda said, matching my tone. "But ever since—" She paused, catching herself. "Ever since we moved in, I guessed." "I'm sure it's just a coincidence," Linda recovered quickly. Just then a huge ball of black and white fur jumped onto the table. "Queenie!" Linda exclaimed. I'm sorry, she laughed. She likes to sit with me while I answer emails. I'll get out of your hair. I stood and carried my mug to the overflowing sink, placing it carefully on a small open patch of counter space. Thank you for the coffee. Anytime. I wish you'd come over sooner, Linda replied warmly, though I saw tension behind her eyes. I'll let you know if we find anything in the yard. I sprinted back home and ran straight up to our bedroom. I just didn't have it in me to go talk to the Reeds right then. As I waited for the animal control officer to show up, I scrolled obsessively through the security camera feed on my phone. Front door, west facing, backyard 1, backyard 2, east facing, then back to the front door. Around and around. Chapter 53. The side of the windowless blue van read, "Your mess is our responsibility," a motto I found absolutely chilling under the circumstances. Though it was clear they wanted to talk to me outside, I ushered the 3 large men into my kitchen so I could point out the general location of the bodies from the safety of my home. I was explaining again that I hadn't been the one to find the deer and couldn't provide their exact whereabouts when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to an animal control officer named Robin Phoenix, a shockingly beautiful woman who couldn't have been much older than 30 or much taller than 5 feet. I invited her in and introduced her to the cleanup crew. "Morning, guys," Robin greeted them, her voice commanding as she addressed the large men. "I'll need about 20 minutes to get a handle on the situation before you get to work. That okay?" "Yes, ma'am," replied the team leader, a colossal guy with a man bun and no neck. "Thank you," she said with a tight smile as she watched the men shuffle out of the kitchen through the front door. Then she turned her imposing persona on me. "Now tell me what to expect before I go out there." I reminded her that I hadn't seen the carnage for myself. "I just can't imagine what animal, in this part of the country anyway, could kill that many deer," Robin said, her brow furrowed. "My bet is they got into some poison and by sheer bad luck died on your property. After that, the scavengers probably got to him." "We've heard there might be a pack of coyote in these woods. Could it have been them?" Robin shook her head. "They couldn't take down a herd. They pick off the weakest, and that'd be plenty of food for the pack." I made a noise, acknowledging the woman's point as I envisioned the Cornish thing pouncing onto a deer's back and dragging it down. "All right then, do you have a back door, or should I go around front?" I led her into the living room and unlocked the French doors. Robin strode confidently across the patio, leaving me feeling like an absolute coward for allowing her to go alone. "Watch out for poison ivy," I called after her. She held up a hand in acknowledgement and walked to the edge of the yard, then paused a moment, staring into the gloom, before moving slowly down the tree line towards the Rust's property, the opposite direction from where the security team had found the dead deer. She stopped about 10 feet from the Rust's yard and disappeared into the underbrush. I held my breath and kept my hand on the doorknob, ready to pull it open at the first sign of trouble, when Robin stormed out of the woods. She was halfway back to the house before she bent over and threw up onto the grass. "Are you all right?" I called, stepping out onto the patio. Robin remained bent over, her hands on her knees. "I'm fine," she said, after wiping her mouth with a sleeve of her uniform. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that." She put her hands on her hips, drawing in deep breaths. "What did you see?" I asked, not wanting to know. She shook her head. "You said there were 5 deer at that end of the property." She pointed to the opposite end of the yard. "That's what they told me." "Well, there are 2 large bucks through there." She nodded toward the area where she'd burst through the trees, which is strange in and of itself, but... Robin closed her eyes and swallowed forcefully. "It looks like something just ripped him apart, and from what I can tell, whatever it did wasn't feeding." "How do you know that?" "I'm relatively certain they were dead before they were mutilated." I didn't know what to say. All I wanted to do was run inside and barricade myself in my bedroom. "Can I get you some water?" I offered weakly. "Thank you," Robin started, then changed her mind. "Actually, you know what? I'd rather just get this over with." She stalked toward the edge of the yard and disappeared through the trees. I stood in shock, watching fallen leaves skip across the yard. A strand of twinkle lights had come loose on the patio, and the cord swayed in the breeze. It was 10 minutes before Robin reappeared. I led her into the house and fetched a glass of ice water. She gulped it down and carried the empty glass to the sink. "Can I get you anything else?" "No, thank you." The woman's eyes were red-rimmed as she met my gaze. "I'll spare you the details, but suffice it to say, it's a complete massacre out there," Whoever did this was powerful, and I don't know what its intention was other than ripping those bodies to shreds. I'm way out of my depth. I called the police. An officer should be here any moment. You think a person did this? I asked nervously. Robin moved towards the kitchen window. It wasn't an animal. Maybe a bunch of high school kids thinking they were devil worshippers or something, but kids aren't coordinated enough to pull that off, unless they shot them. You haven't heard any gunshots recently, have you? I shook my head. I figured. Besides, whatever did this left claw marks. Robin gazed out at the woods. I suppose you lucked out, though. If it was summer, the smell would be unbearable. She turned to look at me. Do you have children? No. Good. Children shouldn't go anywhere near those woods until we know what we're dealing with. No one should. A few of our neighbors have kids, I said. I'll tell them. Please do. I'm going to send the photos I took around to animal control in neighboring towns. I'll let you know as soon as I have any answers. Okay. I'm sorry you had to see that. It's part of the job, Robin replied stiffly. I'll go give those guys the lowdown and warn them about what they're walking into. Thank you, I said, though the words felt completely inadequate. Chapter 54. I texted Linda to let her know more deer had been found close to her property line. Now I'm curious, she texted back. If Cornish isn't back in the next 5 minutes, I'll go look around. A police car pulled up and parked on the street in front of the house. I watched as the same officer who'd been at Cheryl's on the morning of her accident got out and approached Robin and the cleanup crew in the driveway. The animal control officer gestured to the backyard, obviously explaining the circumstances. The guys broke away, retrieving their tools from the truck, and the two women continued to talk, eventually turning to look at the house. As much as I dreaded it, I knew I had to go out there. Closing the door behind me, I waved to the women and crossed the lawn to where they stood in the driveway. Hi, I'm May Kane, I offered. We met down the street at Cheryl Kingsley's house. That's right, the woman replied. Deirdre Mallory, she reminded me. Looks like you're having a string of bad luck here. I nodded. Is it correct that you haven't seen the animals yourself? Yes, I replied, embarrassed that everyone else but me had to go through that particular horror. Have you noticed anything odd lately? Any strangers in the neighborhood? Any odd animal behavior? I hesitated, then told her I hadn't. She eyed me for a long moment, so intensely that I almost confessed the entire nightmare. Well then, she said finally, Robin will show me the scene, and if I have any more questions, we'll come find you. Sound good? Thank you, I said. I think I'll go over to the next-door neighbors and explain what's happened so they can check behind their house while the guys are here. Good idea, Officer Mallory encouraged. The women headed for the backyard, and I walked towards the street as the worrisome hum of a chainsaw started up. I'd only made it halfway down their driveway when Beretta appeared on her front step. Is that a chainsaw? She demanded, stopping me in my tracks. Yes, but what in the hell do you think you're doing? She demanded. You can't take down any trees without express permission from the Neighborhood Association and the Woodland Hills Conservation Commission. We're not taking down trees, I protested. Like hell you aren't, she yelled. Our security company. Taking down trees for what, cameras? What in the world are you thinking? We aren't taking down trees, I yelled back. You think we are idiots, don't you? She demanded, crossing the lawn towards me. Next thing you know, you're going to tell me those aren't chainsaws that I'm hearing. They are, but they're for the deer, I said, holding my hands out. She was far too close. I'll have you know that I've already contacted the attorney retained by our neighborhood association, and he... Oh my God, help! I spun around to see Linda Russ sprinting down the street towards us. It's terrible. You have to come. I shook my head and took a few steps backwards as Linda barreled towards us. Now! What is the problem? Beretta demanded. Linda grabbed onto her arm and began pulling her. Stop that! Maybe we'll have half the forest down if we don't put a stop to this. What are you even talking about? Linda said breathlessly. Come on, right now. Where's the police officer? I don't see the car. The animal control officer is showing her where... Animal control? Beretta interrupted. Beretta! Linda screamed, dropping her arm. This isn't about the deer. What deer? Linda turned and started running across my front yard. I don't know if there's still time to help him, she yelled over her shoulder. Beretta and I exchanged a look and then ran after her. I don't know how long he's been out here, Linda yelled, disappearing behind my house. We caught the attention of the removal crew as we followed her into the woods. I lifted a hand to wave, not knowing what else to do as they stared at us. "I don't want to see the deer," I yelled to Linda, climbing through the underbrush and looking for poison ivy, with Beretta mumbling behind me. "Hurry up!" Linda yelled breathlessly. After a few moments of trying not to trip over the ground cover, we popped out onto the connector trail. "Why didn't we just take the path out here?" Beretta griped, her hands brushing at her legs. "Over here," Linda said, her voice hitching. She stopped, gasping, and covered her mouth with one hand pointing to the ground with the other. I slowed down, not wanting to get any closer. "It might be too late," Linda said, her voice muffled. "Beretta, hurry. You're a nurse, for God's sake. You have to help." "Help who?" "Him." "Oh, my God," I breathed, stopping in my tracks. Beretta saw him at the same moment. She rushed forward, reaching out her fingers beneath the man's neck. He sat, leaned against a large oak tree, his arms limp at his sides, his sweatshirt and the 2 collars beneath it drenched with blood from the major gash on the side of his head. "How did you find him?" Beretta demanded, now holding on to the man's wrists. "Call the police right now." "I don't have my phone," Linda replied shakily. "That's why I came to get you." "Why didn't you run into your house?" "I don't know. This has never happened to me before," Linda shrieked. "You're a nurse." Beretta ignored her. "May, do you have your phone?" "May?" I couldn't answer her. I'd begun shaking uncontrollably. "Sit down," Beretta ordered, moving towards me quickly. "Go on, sit down." I swayed a bit on my feet, then did as I was told, sinking to my knees. "Take a deep breath. Look away from him, May," she said in a stern voice. "Look away." I met her eyes, which held an uncharacteristic concern. "Do you know him?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I don't know him, but I've seen him." "Who is he?" asked Linda. "That's the man who broke into our apartment in Boston." Chapter 55. I chewed at a hangnail as I listened to Tom's side of the conversation with the Boston detective we'd spoken to back in March after the break-in. There wasn't much to hear besides, "I see. Okay. And we'll be sure to let you know." By the time he ended the call, I was ready to jump out of my skin with anxiety. "What did he say?" "He said there's no way to confirm if it was the same man because the guy who broke into our apartment didn't leave any fingerprints or DNA behind." "But I confirmed that it was him." He eyed me. "And you're absolutely certain?" "Yes." "Maybe seeing the dead guy caused some sort of flashback and it made you think, 'God damn it, Tom! The man in the Russ backyard is the same fucking guy who broke into our apartment in Beacon Hill.' I'm sorry. I believe you. I just don't see how it makes any sense." Alongside Beretta and Linda, I'd spent the afternoon being questioned by a Woodland Hills detective. She'd asked the same questions that Tom had. Was I sure? How could I be sure? I didn't have any answers, but yes, I was 100% certain that the dead man in the woods was the same guy who I'd seen in our apartment months ago. "I know it doesn't make any sense," I said to Tom, "but there must be some reason why he followed us out here." "Whatever it was, it's over now. The guy's dead. He can't cause any more problems." "What was he doing out here? How long had he been out here? What the hell did he want?" Tom scrubbed at his face in frustration. "I know I sound like a broken record," I pressed, "but the photo the police showed you, is there any way? I mean, could he have maybe met you through work? Maybe you rented him an apartment in the city?" "I've never seen that guy before in my life," he sighed. "Maybe he saw you at the library and started stalking you?" The ease with which Tom suggested the idea chilled me. "Do you think so?" "I don't know." I slumped down onto one of the counter stools, exhausted. Who the fuck was he? "The police will find out sooner or later. Whoever he was, he's not our problem anymore. I'm just glad we have those cameras installed." I was only half listening to him as my mind replayed the morning. "Maybe it explains what's been happening here," I said, interrupting Tom's ideas about bulking up the security system. "How so?" "What if he was the one maintaining the cemetery?" "Why would he do that?" "I don't know, but what if he's been lurking around for a while? Those muddy footprints in the basement, maybe—" "When were you in the basement?" "With the electrician." Tom nodded. I looked down at the back hallway towards the living room, an idea forming. "Oh my God, what if that guy broke in here during the Halloween party? What if he's the one who took Olive's journals?" "May, stop. Why would he do that?" "I don't know," I admitted. It's just a coincidence. You think it's a coincidence that the same guy who broke into our apartment in the city was murdered in the woods behind our house? The doorbell rang, interrupting Tom's response. Who the hell could that be? I watched him stomp across the room and pull open the front door. A muffled voice traveled across the kitchen, but I couldn't tell who it belonged to. Tom stepped into view, and behind him appeared Angela. Chapter 56. I dissolved into tears at the sight of her. You weren't answering my calls, and your texts are too fucking chipper, she admonished, crossing the kitchen to hug me. I got scared and I just need to get eyes on you. She turned to look at Tom. I headed out right after work, but the traffic getting out here was a fucking nightmare. It's good to see you, he said. She looked at me, then back to Tom. Okay, the vibes are atrocious. What's wrong? I mean, aside from everything about this place. We had a bad scare today, Tom explained. Our next-door neighbor found a body in the woods behind our house. What the fuck? It was the guy who broke into our apartment, I added. Angela didn't react. She slipped out of her coat and dropped it on the kitchen table, then went and grabbed the coffee pot and began to fill it at the sink. I need something hot to sip on while I listen to this. Where do you keep your grounds? Tom retreated upstairs, saying he had emails to answer, and I sat with Angela at the kitchen table, catching her up on the day's events and every other horrendous detail. She listened with minimal comment. So, that's that, I finished. A Ouija board? She admonished. Really, May? After everything I just told you, that's what concerns you the most? Yes! Your judgment is completely out of whack. I don't think you have any idea how insane all of this sounds. And this house. She looked around the kitchen. I'm not being mean. You've done a nice job here, but it is fucking creepy as hell. I didn't even want to get out of the car. It's neighborhood. She shuddered. You really think it's that bad? She shook her head. It's worse. And what's with Tom? What do you mean? You know what I mean. He's stressed about work, about everything. It's just been one thing after the other. We just haven't had a second to catch our breath. Look, Sarah has our guest room ready. Pack a bag, take a few days to clear your head. I think you need to get away from this place for a beat so you can see things more clearly. I can't just leave Tom here alone. She considered me for a long moment. This isn't going to end well, May. Things aren't going well now, I pointed out bitterly. Right, so take a break. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I appreciate you coming out here to check on me, and I know you probably think I'm absolutely insane for wanting to stay, but I have to figure this out. I want to figure this out. She studied my face for a long moment. It's not a book, May. I know that. I appreciate the offer, I do, but I can't leave. Angela sighed. It really is too bad about that dead guy. To say the least, I laughed. I just mean, how are you going to get any answers now? The guy's dead. The police don't know who he was. You may never know what he was doing here. Well, considering what he did to those deer, at least he can't hurt anyone else. Yeah, but if he killed those deer, who killed him? Chapter 57. Angela left only after I'd managed to convince her that I would immediately pick up the phone if she called and respond to her texts within 5 minutes of receiving them. The rest of the night was awful. I didn't sleep. I'm sure drinking coffee with Angela hadn't helped, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man slumped against the tree. Tom worked from home the following day. If I go into the office, I'll have to answer a million questions all day about what happened. I just can't face that yet, he'd said. As exhausted as I was, I couldn't stay in the house for another second. I had to get out, away from the cul-de-sac. I decided to go to the library. Please keep your phone on, Tom said as I headed out the door, just in case I need the car for a showing. I probably should have been afraid to step outside by myself, but I was too worn out. I backed out of the driveway, the tires crunching over fallen leaves, and glanced over at the island at the center of the street. Its tangle of foliage appeared impenetrable. I imagined the still, quiet cemetery at its center, the ghost of the man we'd found in the woods watching over the graves. Shivering, I threw the car into drive and curved around the road, relieved to escape the neighborhood, if only for a few hours, when Kat came into view. Despite the frigid air, she wore only a t-shirt, jeans, and a child-sized backpack. She stood beside her garage, facing the backyard, her head down as if bracing against the wind. What the hell is she doing? I wondered, slowing the car and rolling down the passenger window. Cat, I called out, but she didn't seem to hear me. I honked the horn as she disappeared behind the house, heading towards the woods. As I watched the half-stripped branches thrash in the breeze, a horrible thought occurred to me. What if that wasn't Cat? What if it was a cat thing, like the Cornish monster? I quickly rolled up the window. Cat knew what happened to those deer. She knew a man had been killed in those woods. She would never go into the forest alone again. With no jacket, wearing one of her children's backpacks, no less. Convinced I'd just seen a monster, I sped across the bridge towards town, desperate to get away from the neighborhood. The smile on Verity's face dimmed as I approached the reference desk. I heard about the trouble in your neighborhood. Are you all right? What in the world happened? I tried to muster a smile. It's a long story. I'll walk you upstairs, she offered, coming out from behind the desk. Those damn woods, Verity lamented when I'd finished telling her everything. I can't say that I'm surprised. Really? They have a bad reputation. Most of it's silly superstitious nonsense, but what? She played with a stretchy plastic keyring on her wrist, avoiding my eyes. It's probably just a coincidence. I dropped my bag onto one of the leather chairs before the bookshelves. If you think there's something I should know, please tell me. I've lived here my whole life, and we've been talking about that neighborhood since I was in elementary school. There was even a song. Verity looked up at the ceiling as if trying to remember. Oh, I remember now, she chuckled. Acheron Circle, come on in. See the demons who haunt therein? Acheron Circle, don't be shy. Meet our monsters before you die. Her smile faded as she took in my expression. I was too exhausted to stop the tears from flowing. I covered my face with my hands in embarrassment. May, I am so sorry. What a jerk I am. I just haven't thought of that song in years. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I replied, wiping my eyes. Things just keep getting worse and worse, and we can't sell the house. Don't move. What neighborhood hasn't had their fair share of troubles? It's not just that. The house is... I hesitated. It's just a lot of work. I'm sorry, I haven't been sleeping well. I wiped my eyes again, embarrassed I'd already shared too much. I have a confession to make. What's that? I pulled Elwyn Payne's journal out of my bag. I took this home with me. She waved a hand dismissively. Don't even mention it. Excuse me, where are the books on minimalism? A woman in a faux fur vest and high-heeled boots had materialized out of nowhere. I wondered how long she'd been standing there. I'd be happy to help, Verity replied, then looked back at me. Stop by the desk before you go, okay? I told her I would. I dragged the box where I'd found Payne's journal over to the chairs, sat down, and dug through its contents. There were piles of letters and a stack of journals like the one I'd already read. The thought of reading them overwhelmed me. At the bottom of the box, I found a thin, red fabric-covered book with a silver plaque engraved with the title, The Holy Sacrificial Circle, a proposal. I cracked it open and sat back in the chair. The epigraph read, Their nature is fire, their restraint water. Let this be our holy guide. What the hell? I whispered, turning the page. It took only half an hour to read the entire manifesto. Payne believed his life's work, his assignment from God, was to build a portal fueled by souls ensnared by the 7 sins, wherein demons may embody the damned in their darkness. A sacrifice for the greater good, a place to tempt the tempters, keeping a contingent of demons occupied with a group of people so others might have a fighting chance to throw off their own guiding sins. Let this creation stand as a prototype, he wrote, so that wherever the Church of Confession and Redemption stands, so shall a holy sacrificial circle, offering up the few so that our flock may have a chance at salvation. The journal's contents read like the maniacal rantings of a religious zealot, but a chillingly convincing one. What was happening in the cul-de-sac pointed to a terrifying possibility. Had he actually done it? Was the cul-de-sac his prototype? The demon trap he'd wanted to create? I pushed the box back towards the wall and gathered up my things. How are you doing? Verity asked as I passed the front desk. Fine. I'm sorry I lost it there for a minute. I think you're holding up really well considering the circumstances, she reassured me. Thanks. I don't know if you'd still even consider me after all that, though, I said, forcing a smile. But Has there been any more talk of a position opening up here? Verity's face fell. Oh, May, I'm so sorry. You're going through so much, and I didn't want to pile on, but Jeremy broke up with his girlfriend, so we're stuck with him for the foreseeable future. I know something else will open up, and when it does, I promise, you will be our #1 candidate. Chapter 58. I sat in the car staring into the dark woods behind the library parking lot, utterly drained. I'd reached my breaking point. It was too much. The absolute absurdity of our living situation. Finding the dead stalker, whoever the hell he'd been in the woods. Those poor deer. The fact that we were trapped in a neighborhood that had been created to trap people with demons. I'd been holding out hope that if I could just get my hands on that job, my salary could pay for an apartment. Even if we couldn't sell the house, at least we wouldn't have to live there. Now, on top of everything else, I held the crushing disappointment over losing the library job, which was never really a possibility anyway. All I wanted was to curl up in bed, escape into a cozy mystery, and pretend none of it was happening. Ignoring everything about the neighborhood really did seem like the only answer. There was no escape. I had no job, no car of my own, no purpose. I stared at those woods for a long time, unable to find the courage to go home, and then my phone buzzed. I picked it up and looked at the screen, surprised to find that I'd missed several texts from my group chat with Evelyn, Kat, and Lucky. Evelyn. Kat? I tried to call you a couple times, trying this text chain now. Your sitter's looking for you. Evelyn. Ellen M., have you seen C? Her sitter just called and she's late for class. I told her she could drop the kids over here. Lucky. Sorry, I was on the treadmill. I haven't seen her. Car trouble? Dead cell phone, maybe? Evelyn. Her car's in the driveway. Sitter said she left for a trail round around 9? Lucky. Shit. The pit in my stomach deepened as I read. I replied to them, explaining that I thought I'd seen Kat walking towards the woods earlier that morning, but I wasn't totally sure that it had been her. Lucky. What do you mean, not sure if it was her? Me. She was looking the other way and had on a kid's backpack. It was weird. Evelyn. Her kids just got dropped off, so I put them in front of a movie. I'm worried. The sitter said she was kind of off this morning. Me. Leaving the library, headed back now. Lucky. Come straight to my house. I pulled into Lucky's driveway 10 minutes later, left the keys on the seat, and sent a quick text to Tom, letting him know where the car was if he needed it. I wasn't about to park in our driveway and walk. A light rain had begun. Tiny freezing cold drops stung my face as I scurried up the driveway. I just raised my hand to ring the bell when Lucky yanked open the door in a matching tank top and yoga pants. Come in, she insisted. It's freezing. On most days, the glamorous perfection of Lucky's home would make me feel less than. But as I stood there in junky old jeans, Uggs, and Tom's sweatshirt, I was keenly aware of my appearance. I put a hand up and attempted to tame my bangs. Lucky frowned. Where were you? The hardware store? I was at the library, reading about Elwyn Payne. She looked at me blankly. The guy who built the cul-de-sac, I explained. I know who he is. Why would you go to the library like that? Flustered, I tried to make an excuse, but she cut me off. Do you want to borrow a coat? Why? We're going to walk the path to see if Kat fell and twisted her ankle or got hurt out there. I froze. Exasperated, she zipped her jacket. It's broad daylight, May. Come on. I saw that Cornish monster thing when it was still light out, I protested. Lucky stomped to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. Fine, you stay safe and sound right here, and I'll just go by myself. Whoever killed that man in the woods is still out there. Which is exactly why we need to find her, she argued. You know she wouldn't go out there alone. What if... I hesitated. What if that wasn't Kat that I saw? What if it was like that thing I thought was Cornish but wasn't? No, her sitter saw her leave. It was Kat. Maybe we should call the police, I suggested. Lucky hesitated. Then, no, this neighborhood doesn't need any more attention. I'm sure she either got turned around on the trail or twisted an ankle. I could tell she was downplaying the situation, being matter-of-fact because she was terrified. If we called the police, she'd have to admit how frightened she was, but that was no reason to go traipsing out into the woods. Let me text Tom and see if he can come with us at least. Lucky sighed and watched as I called Tom. The phone rang and rang. No answer. I ended the call and texted him. A loud bang overhead caused us both to jump. My phone slipped out of my hand and clattered to the floor. Sorry, Mom, a voice called from the top of the stairs. What are you doing up there? Lucky yelled back, storming into the foyer. Edward's helping me move my bedroom around, Daria replied. Don't you scratch up my floors. I'm going for a walk with Mrs. Kane. We'll be back in a bit. Edward's home for the long weekend from boarding school, and Daria needed a break before finals, she said, lowering her voice. They leave tomorrow, thank God. Missing them is easier than constantly worrying about them in this house. She went to the hall closet and slid into a black puffy coat before tossing a North Face ski jacket at me. Put this on. Let's go. Into the woods in a storm after someone that they're not really sure really was Kat. Ugh, it's not good. Thank you, everyone, for listening again this week, and please do, if you haven't already, follow me over on Instagram, because it's the best way for me to get out information about when I'm going to be posting. Like this week, I was a day late, so I let everyone know over there. And if you know someone who enjoys cozy horror, please share the story with them. All right, have a great week and take care.